Chapter 2. Hope Born, Darkness Renewed. Scott had never seen anyone rise up against the vampires who had taken over England. Not with his own two eyes, at least. Not in the flesh. Not with anything approaching true success. Not, that is, until now. Despite the fear whipping up a frenzied gallop of his heart, the ache in his spine, the metallic bite of blood on the tongue, and the tingling, almost electric sensation buzzing beneath his skin, a sense of raw astonishment captured his senses. Not only had he never witnessed such a spectacle firsthand, but the closest he had come was watching the video which transformed the world. The infamous video which had drawn back the veil, a phrase which had regularly cropped up since, and exposed their existence to all humanity. The reality of nightmares long confined to myth and folklore, and the proof they could be fought. Scott had watched the footage countless times while he could. His parents had been so dismissive, as had so many of the sceptical fools of the country before the blackout, but Scott had recognised this was important. He'd accepted that life as they knew it was forever changed from that moment. He simply hadn't realised how colossal an upheaval would occur. In those days before everything fell apart, while tragedy tugged and pulled at the thread, unravelling society, Scott pored over all the footage he could dig up, resolved to devour every scrap of knowledge at his fingertips and fascinated by the prospects. Even as the unending false night had swept the country, as the earth swallowed the mayor's Hyde Park estate, as the blood flowed from the darkened heavens and the planet's hunger grew, unleashing cataclysm upon the land, still he had studied all he could. And during those studies, it was the figure flying to his defence now who had created the greatest impression. The hero of the hour, the man, it seemed, in all probability, had offered the world their first irrefutable glimpse of the supernatural. The man, it was reported, who had led London's citizens in their fateful battle the night before darkness fell. The man who knew how to fight these horrors and, more importantly, how to win. His dark hood, which cast shadows on an even darker visage, was thrown off in a grand sweeping motion, which saw a second arrow slice through the air quicker than Scott could blink. Ignoring the shooting pain of being dropped on his injured leg, counting blessings for his rescuer's impeccable timing, Scott scrambled clear of the vampire, arms and legs scurrying him backwards in an almost crab-like retreat. The hunter. What was his name? Funny, the questions which go through your mind when you're facing down death, Scott thought. Except the vibe had shifted. A waltz with the Reaper no longer felt the foregone outcome, and his trembling was fast settling, conquered by awe. The hunter buried a further 2 arrows into their vampire assailant before the fiend ever got close, drawing and loosing with terrifying, inhuman speed. Grunting, the biker tore an arrow from his broad neck, the sole injury which seemed to cause him grief. He presented no care to the two jutting from his chest, or the one dug into his thigh, and hurled the projectile in a rage as he stampeded towards vengeance. Mouth agape, Scott lingered on the uneven ground, leaning against a crumpled lamppost, unable to look away as his rescuer effortlessly evaded the vampire biker's feral lunges and sweeps. This man, if he truly was a man, not another demon in disguise, saw everything before it happened and designed his moves in tune with the rhythm, engaging only at the opportune moments and turning his opponent's strengths against him. "Scott!" Gary skidded in beside him, far less taken by the display. "Have you ever seen a bow like that?" Scott breathed, eyes widening at his saviour's adroitness with the curved, blade-tipped bow. "Scott!" The blood-sucking biker roared as another failed attempt to crush the timely rescuer resulted in lacerations to the jaw and arm, and the loss of his balance through a stealthy leg kick, which nearly saw him toppled. "I knew it was possible! Gary, we can win!" Finally, Scott awoke to the realization, and blanched as he caught sight of the tears shimmering in his younger companion's eyes. "Where's Jessie?" I tried my best, but the other one in the jacket." My, what do we have here?" A melodious voice, laced with a menacing cadence, drew the spectators' gazes over the shoulder. She would have been beautiful, the lithe newcomer, if not for the scorn in her slanted glare, the way she licked her lips, or the darkness shining through her eyes, revealing the tainted spirit caged within. Scott and Gary withdrew, climbing to their feet, the latter directing his gun and shaking arms at the latest threats. Scott cast a hopeful glance behind. The dance still tied his rescuer up in its deadly rhythms. This was it. Game over. Past the controller, as Jessie had said. A knot tightened in his stomach, knowing he would never see his sister again, never greet his niece or nephew, never see them smile or hear them laugh. "Stay back!" Gary summoned all his bravado and was challenged by a malicious cackle. "How adorable!" The new fiend tilted her head, mascara line, smoky eyes darting between the pair. "Wouldn't you care for immortality, youngling?" She licked her full, charcoal black lips, stacking seductions. "Don't you feel the call of eternity?" Gary clasped another hand to the gun, steadying its aim, and clenched his jaw. The woman sighed. "Of course not. You're yet too young. You, on the other hand," she fixed her piercing gaze on Scott. "I can feel it in you, the way my presence makes your blood pump, pulsing through every inch of your body in those wild, uncontrollable bouts of arousal." Alluring as a bewitching temptress, gyrating with her words, she floated her hands across herself, up the neck and downstairs, offering a masterful display. As Scott's cheeks flushed, another female voice cried out, "Hey, Morticia!" The provocative vampire had hardly turned her head before she lost it. A flash of silvery steel, angled to perfection, and her head leapt into the air, trailing black tresses in manic streams as a fire ignited within the vampire's flesh. The body slumped to its knees, consuming itself in an inferno confined to the creature, which seemed to have been stirring beneath the surface, awaiting its catalyst. In all the months following the banishment of the sun, neither Scott nor Gary had seen a vampire perish with their own eyes. Certainly not at such close range, for Scott had often boasted that he had, in fact, witnessed the demise of one since the notorious recordings. He realised now, with this front row view, that even the clarity and detail of the videos which parted the veil failed to capture the rawness of the occasion, the totality of anguish, and the pervading scent of unnatural sulphur. Within seconds, the woman was no more, flesh and bone consumed by flame, reduced to dust drifting in the breeze, dancing across the waves of churned-up street, and vanishing among its cracks, settling into the earth. "I hate when those damn bloodsuckers steal my style," said the executioner, a woman who took Scott's breath away as she wiped the blade of her short sword. He had always been a sucker for strong, sultry older women. In the movies, of course. Scott lacked the courage with most women in real life, let alone those with such fire and beauty as his new rescuer presented. She was an Amazonian, the vision of a golden-haired warrior assassin. Then he realised who she was. He had seen her before too. That blonde, plaited hair, those sharp glacial blue eyes and rich tan, her Texan accent. "Are you with—" Scott found and lost his voice as he threw another look over the shoulder, battling bewilderment from the onslaught of shifting emotions the past minutes had brought. The huntress winked at him, gave an abrupt, powerful whistle, flipped the sword with a deft flick, caught the blade, and launched the weapon through the air. Her partner, for there was no doubt of this now in Scott's mind, was in the clutches of the biker, though he doggedly held his assurance in the situation. He wrangled the grapple into position with ease, leading a tenacious tango, and the sword plunged into the bloodsucker's meaty back. "I'll have a drink now." Milo's patience was wearing thin. How was it possible for a mere human to outmaneuver him like this? He snarled, knowing it didn't matter now he had his pest in his grasp. "Got you now, you fucking nick!" The hunter drew in with dizzying speed and launched a ferocious headbutt, crunching Milo's nose beneath his forehead, sending blood oozing down his face. His own blood. Vampire blood. Milo unleashed a fury-fueled roar summoned from the depths he never knew existed. "No one drops the N-bomb," threatened the human, playing his defiance calmer than a gentle breeze and boiling Milo's blood. "Especially on a fucking Maori." Milo could feel the mortal strength fading against his own, though. This grapple was more than expected, but it was finished now. The thirst drove him, empowered him, fusing him with the might of a higher being on a cellular level. This human was his meal, his prize well earned, and nothing would change that. He tightened his grip and forced the Maori's broad arms down with every ounce of his preternatural strength, finally gaining the advantage. There, the moment of pure triumph. He discovered the opening, angled his head to dive in and bury his cuspids into the thick neck of his foe, when none of the man's irritatingly well-placed tactical armour offered protection. But the mortal was smiling. Milo heard the whistle, but the meaning was lost to him. He didn't realise he was playing into their designs, following their script. His move for the kill left him open to the hunter's subtle manoeuvres, and the bellow which thundered from his chest as cold steel pierced flesh carried the weight of anguish and frustration. Milo was too inexperienced. He realised as he flailed, frantic to extract the sword from his back. "Fucking amateur," smirked the Maori hunter, drawing his own blade and casting it through Milo's neck, swift as a bolt of lightning. "Are you okay, kid?" Scott glanced at Gary, whose trembling bluster had faded to a memory, supplanted by his typical needs-to-be-protected demeanour. Scott gulped. "Thanks to you." He looked to the woman to ensure she realised he meant her equally, and blushed again. "Don't mention it. It's kind of what we do. The name's Robert. This is my wife, Harley." The huntress swept up close to her husband and, with a saucy wink, clasped his butt cheek, then swirled past him and stooped to reclaim her blade from the dissipating pile of smouldering ashes that had been Milo. "You guys, are you the ones who... How did you..." Robert chuckled. "Sad to say this ain't our first rodeo, kid. We've been at this a while," Harley added, reuniting with her husband and eyeing up the youths. "Decapitation ain't easy after all. Hey, you realise those things won't kill them, right?" Scott glanced at the gun shaking in Gary's hand. "Yeah, we, Look, I've got about 1,000,000 questions for you guys, but right now we need your help." "Oh, I don't know, we're super busy. Can't you tell?" Harley shrugged, sweeping her arm across the haunted scene that had been their battleground. Scott gathered a breath loaded with newfound confidence. "Then thanks, but we've got to get moving. They can't have gone far with her. Gary..." "Whoa! Slow your roll, kid," Robert hastened, raising an eyebrow at his wife. "She's kidding." Harley offered a whimsical half-shrug, stressing her exposed shoulder in a way Scott found impossible to ignore despite nervous tension. "The fact you'd even think they can't have gone far shows how unprepared you are for this, darling," she said, not unkindly. "Does that mean you'll help?" Robert finished. Scott gulped, then nodded. With a regretful sigh, Robert drew closer and clasped a hand around Scott's shoulder. "Kid, I don't know why you'd want to go chasing vamps unless you've got some sort of death wish. Believe me, that's no path for you." "There's a safe house we know of," said Harley, scanning the area warily, though with a casual air. "It should still be standing. We'll see you get there without a scratch, or, well, any more scratches." "No!" Scott's temper flared. It had been an age, or so it seemed, since anyone spoke to him like a kid. He'd been one of the eldest in their motley crew since the early days, which felt far longer ago than in reality. "Look, I'm 19 for fuck's sake. I don't need parenting. I need your goddamn help. They took my sister, and if I don't..." "Is she like you too?" asked Harley, drawing her husband's gaze momentarily to a small pendant she had removed from a pouch on her utility belt, a carved crystal replete with intricate patterns quivering under the paltriest pulses in her palm. Scott's brow creased. "What do you mean, like me?" "Tell me about her," said Robert, his voice low and earnest. "Your sister." "She's my twin." "Identical?" "No." "How about her hair?" If I said ginger, she'd kill me. The light-hearted words slipped out without Scott's conscious intent. He was about to question this bizarre interrogation when the hunter spoke again. "And would you say she's strong? Not physically necessarily, but mentally, emotionally." "Yeah? Look, what's this all about?" Scott seized hold of his courage as the peril became a more distant memory. "'Cause if you're not going to help me, then you're just wasting time I don't have. Time Jesse doesn't have." Robert sighed again. "Kid, you've seen enough of late to get that the world ain't like you figured it was, right? That people ain't what they seem to be." Scott shook off the hand Robert returned to his shoulder. "What are you getting at? Look, just tell me straight, alright? I'm a man, just like you. Don't treat me like a bloody child." Robert straightened up and glanced at Harley, who nodded. "No bullshit?" "No bullshit," Scott repeated with a firm nod. "Right to the point. I respect that. Fine, kid. Have it your way. There's magic in your veins, flowing through the molecules of your blood. We don't know enough about how it works to offer you more than that. Magic is tricky, to say the least. But what I can tell you is this. They want guys like you on their side. You're what they're hunting the land for, not just a feast. They're recruiting. Do you understand?" Scott's world was spinning, pieces of a reluctant, unknown mosaic falling into place, but nothing mattered more than his sister. "So, what does this have to do with Jessie? She's your twin. If you have it, chances are she does too." "Chances?" Not so much chances as pretty guaranteed, Harley chimed in, pacing now as she danced her watchful eyes over the vicinity. So, if they took her all the way, said Robert, treading with careful cadences. They might have waited around if she was just food. If we were lucky, he caged her for later. But, kid, I'm sorry, but there's no saving her. There's no coming back from what they'll do to her. But we have to try, kid. Stop calling me that! Scott exploded, deflecting the hunter's concerned gesture. Come on, Gary. I'll drop you back with the others, and then I'm coming with you, said Gary, breaking his timidness with surprising spirit. No way. Out of the question. Like you can stop me? Gary drew his chest up, crossed his arms, and fixed his eyes on Scott's. The others need you. They can't look after themselves if none of us make it back. You know that. There are more of you? Asked Harley, stepping into the discussion. Kids? Yeah, actual kids who actually need us. And you're so eager to charge off half-cocked into the jaws of the beast when you've got lives depending on you, the huntress gave a disdainful snort. Might as well go begging to suckers to tear your damn throat out. Harley, Robert stressed her name, running a hand through his dark, cropped hair, daring not to extend his sentence and actually tell her to calm down. Because let's face it, in the history of everything, when has that ever worked with anyone? What? Robbie, this ain't time for mollycoddling. These kids need to understand the score and learn smart plays. I'm sick of seeing us losing this fight because no one can keep their damn mind in straight. She folded her arms tightly across her chest and clicked her tongue. Suicide missions only ever end one way. It's not a suicide mission, Scott's tone boasted real fire now. Like you wouldn't do the same for the ones you love. I'm gonna save her and I'm gonna save her fucking child, whether you help me or not. Robert blinked away his perplexity. Child? The sternness of Harley's countenance softened a touch, along with her posture. Forget you! Scott tore past the hunters. I thought you guys were heroes. Guess I still have a lot to learn. Thanks for your help. Be seeing ya. Come on, Gary. Harley snagged the timid youth's scrawny arm as he passed and met his gaze. Gary gulped. Jessie's pregnant. So, where did you get that gear? You like? Harley twisted, promoting her figure and the array of blades, guns, and assorted equipment strapped to her attire. Best microfiber Kevlar money can buy, or, well, could buy, anyhow. Hardly weighs a feather, but it'll stop a bullet dead. Plus, stylish, right? And I love black. Why don't you, Scott gulped his embarrassment away. Why don't you have as much as Robbie? Harley giggled, drawing her husband's loving gaze. A woman's natural gifts should never be overlooked. They can be as powerful and disarming as the mightiest blow, and offer more protection than the toughest armour in the right moments. Plus, I like the breathing room. Flexibility, you know? Robert lifted his hand, fist clenched, motioning them to pause while he checked the digital display of his bracer adorning his wrist. What's he tracking? Asked Gary, on the other side of the huntress, timidness fading in the wake of curiosity. He had always had a soft spot for tech. Trace vibrations. Bloodsuckers of a certain standing may have a nasty habit of moving quicker than our eyes can follow, but with Robbie's bracer we can always catch up. At least with the ones we've faced so far. So, they don't just disappear. Harley gave a derisive snort. They wish, kiddo. Nah, they move like we do, only quicker. Much quicker. But that kind of speed leaves trace residue, a trail that the right gear can set us upon. I've been telling Robbie for years this magic could do the job just as well, even better maybe, but he doesn't exactly trust the stuff. Why is that? Gary pressed. The huntress exhaled a heartfelt sigh. Power comes with a price. We've seen it paid, and I'll tell you, it ain't pretty. She caught sight of Scott's deadpan expression. But that's the most severe cases. That's only the most severe cases. Guys messing around with some real dark shit, you know? Hell, I would have stopped pestering Robbie years ago if I thought it wasn't worth the risk. Robert signalled left, down a main road riddled with foreboding. Frayed wires and torn-up appliances poured from disemboweled shop fronts onto the streets, sorry remnants of carnage and targeted foraging. Shards of blood-stained glass and warped debris lifted the tarmac from a hover car unfortunate enough to have lost control on a nearby air road as it snaked the surrounding infrastructure. The vehicle itself wrapped nose first around a crooked post. pinned in place by twisted metal and a seemingly impossible angle, held aloft some 20 feet in the air. The vast facade of the madam's subdermals appeared bitten through by gargantuan teeth, exposing the store's remaining insides beyond the sinkhole which guarded the entrance, dormant tech of the highest caliber awaiting its command and flesh host, surrounded by ghostly figures peering out of the gloom through lifeless eyes. Harley shuddered. Ugh, mannequins always gave me the creeps. Actually, they're not mannequins, said Gary, finding his voice more in the comfort of knowledge. Not exactly, anyway. They're, clones, for the most part. Not like living or anything, but real flesh and bone. They grew them so as they could better advertise their tech. Skin recoloration, reality augmentation implants, sub-D armor plating, pleasure enhancements. His cheeks glowed. Harley shook her head, nibbling her lip as they passed the madam's, traversing the violently disturbed street in front of its maw. Is it any wonder some said we were damned already? She murmured, gaze lingering on a motionless silhouette staring at her from within. Can't play God without the fallout. Huh? The huntress shook off her roaming mind and flashed Scott a smile with feigned warmth so undetectable to be nothing short of talent. Nothing to worry about, sugar. Scott nodded, eyes flitting in all directions for threats, bypassing the ruined wonders of not so long ago and any notions of how one could repurpose them to a wildly altered world. His mind was of singular, bonded, self-centered and altruistic focus. Without Jessie, what kind of future was there for any of their pack? Even so, something nagged at him. So, I was wondering. Harley spared him a glance as they rounded a scorched 5-car pile-up painted with dried blood. What made you change your mind? Why are you helping us? The huntress sighed, shielding her toned midriff on instinct, a portion fully covered by her get-up, despite it seeming an area one as provocative as her might want the world to see. That there's a long story, Scotty. Scott breathed a wistful, almost chuckle. You sound just like her, my sister. Harley flashed a smile. All the more reason we're going to get this done. She glanced over her shoulder to the madams again, and up the towering face of the building which soared to the city's ruined canopy, an exposed spine of the metropolis connecting to the carcass of the former domains of the wealthy. And see where this leads. The trail stops up ahead, said Robert, bringing the party to a standstill. He pointed to a turning off the main street beyond a section of fallen air road, and which peppered the ground with its remains. We go up. God, this is thirsty work. How is she? Adjusting wonderfully. No doubt she'll be pleased. Indeed. Such powerful potential. The greatest gift one could offer. Careful, Antoine. I've seen her tear out the throats of the arrogant without a second thought. She's unpredictable, tempestuous. She's a goddess living among us. Antoine adjusted his sleeves on his pinstripe suit, fiddled with the cufflinks on his shirt, then whipped out a comb, raking it through his hair. Jealousy doesn't become you, Ishmael. It's male now. Just male, countered the shorter, stockier bloodsucker, drawing his shades down his crooked nose to offer an enforcing glare. How many times do you need reminding? Antoine guffawed. Male! Sincerest apologies. How could I forget? I swear, old friend, never again. A low growl escaped Male's dark lips. Don't mock me, Antoine. You know how that ends. Not for long. Antoine spun on his companion, cruel eyes casting curses as he advanced. With this tribute at my feet, we no longer stand on level footing, brother. Male seized Antoine's pinstripe lapels in a bout of rage, drawing the scrawny vampire close. I'm not your fucking brother. He spat, releasing his comrade with a backwards jerk. Chortling, Antoine smoothed the creases from his lavish suit. We're all brothers and sisters of the night, Male. You do well to remember such truth if you hold any desire to raise yourself from the trenches. Who says I want anything of the sort? Antoine returned the comb to his pocket after another quick, unnecessary sweep. Careful, if the envoys catch you speaking like that. He drew in a sharp breath for emphasis. I don't think I could keep you safe from their wrath. Maybe they're not as hopelessly devoted as you. Antoine burst into overly zealous laughter, doubling over into himself through the act. Male folded his arms across his broad chest and grunted, brow creasing. Are you done? Ah, Antoine wiped a tear from his eye as he reined himself under control. I'll miss you, you mad little shit." Now it was Mail's turn to laugh. "You really think they'll take you with them?" he asked, scratching his short, wiry beard. "She's the prize, Anne, not you. Then you always blur blind to your own reality." "The prize is ours, turned tainted." Aggression overtook elation, and Antoine stormed closer. "How dare you!" Mail held his ground, staring defiant fire up into his companion's fierce, accusing eyes. "A question you'd be well served to load an answer for in your own chamber, old friend." A twitch of irritation blended with the dawn of concern flinched Antoine's features. "No, you're wrong. The swiftness of my actions will be rewarded, will it though? Of course! You honestly believe she wants them brought over by such—" Mail cast his concealed eyes up and down his associate. "Weakness?" Fury filled Antoine's cheeks, flushing them with the vigour of his latest feast. "Are you so keen to test the limits of my weakness, dear Mail?" His fangs extended, fingers flexing. "Is this how our partnership meets its end?" Mail glanced to Antoine's poised hand, primed and ready to rip apart the world with diamond-edged nails, their kind subtler weapon, and erupted with laughter. "Don't be ridiculous. You know me, ever the pragmatist. I only hope, for your sake, that your actions are taken as intended." Antoine growled, relaxing only slightly. "Who are the envoys?" Readjusting his sleeves and recapturing nonchalance, Antoine shook his head. "New arrivals, as I understand it. They came from the mainland. Norway, I believe. Newcomers, and they're already stationed above the lowly. So swift to condemn, Mail. Don't forget that if I am such, you are not far above me. What will it be this year? 200? 197. 197, Antoine mocked, overemphasizing words and gestures. "Tell me, how do those measly few years you hold over me taste? Rewarding? Full of experiences, pleasures and lessons I could only dream of?" He chortled, a sense of refrain kicking in. "You are a fool, Mail, but not a deluded one." Antoine returned an ugly grimace. As a retort formed on his tongue, an anomaly halted its leap. His head jerked to the side, ears pricked, slanted nostrils flaring. "Did you hear that?" Mail cast his attention over the residence, an apartment of resplendent wealth they had chosen for its comfort, high vantage point, and tactical positioning near the centre of the city. In a shift even the shrewdest of mortal eyes would deem swift as teleportation, Mail crossed to the vast windows and peered out at the carcass of London. The city's innumerable skyscraper constructs, elevated air roads, and living levels presented a charred imitation of former glory. Only the strongest standing proud, whilst others collapsed against one another or toppled to their complete demise to create a veritable playground for creatures such as he, denizens absent fear of the inherent dangers of such a hazardous home. "Not out there, you half-wit," Antoine hissed. Mail sighed. "Simpleton, do you think any human could be capable of traversing the inners of this shell?" He offered a grand gesture encompassing the entire building. "There is no passage through. We saw to that. If you heard anything, it must be from out there." "I know what I heard. And from where, you condescending shit. Don't treat me like one of your knuckle-dragging fledglings who doesn't know fang from arse." Mail gestured to the doorway. "By all means, indulge your whimsy. See if I care. Besides," he stooped to collect a flickering hollow portrait of the apartment's previous owners, "I have my own, how did you put it, knuckle-dragging fledglings to worry about. See to your own game." Antoine snarled as his companion dropped the tech, crushed it under heel, and directed his gaze back to the graveyard city. Then he swept for the doorway, muttering an impressive string of profanity with each step. Intrigue caused him a moment's pause as he passed Jessie's room, catching sight of her licking her fingers, an enamoured glint in her eyes, and allowed the wicked smirk to cross his lips. He knew he was right about this. The Queen's envoys were certain to see his efforts for their worth and reward him with the sole currency of meaning to him. "Power," the word escaped his twisted lips as poison given muted breath. It is a true moment of perception to know your final words. Some would call it a gift, poetic eloquence to be afforded ample thought. Others might argue the impassioned desire never to see such an hour on the horizon, to be merely struck as the scythe of time deems it theirs. Perhaps, regardless of Antoine's opinion on the matter, he would have felt contentment in the knowledge this was his. Perhaps. Delicious. The slash pricked Mail's ears. That sound, one far from a stranger to him, of steel carving through flesh and bone. The death cry caught in the throat, unformed and pitiful. the sizzle of fires conjured from the beyond, which no man-made effort could ever replicate by other means. The raw, sulphuric odour of Antoine's personal hell reached his elevated senses as he spotted the hunters storming their palace in the sky, dragging wisps of dust in their wake. Dust he had always known he would see one day. Antoine. Mail would have readily placed a wager on outliving the fool had there been anyone to pay up when the universe realised the occasion. Despite the coldness of lacking emotion he experienced towards losing such a long-time companion, Mail was seized by a pang of regret and guilt knotting his insides at not believing his partner. He felt he owed Antoine more, but then they hadn't been close for 50 years, and Antoine had grown arrogant, forgotten his roots in the rapid pursuit of power and status. Fuck Antoine. No matter, Mail murmured, glancing between the stone visages of the man and the woman who sought to encircle him. I don't suppose either of you is content to call it quits with my rash compatriot. His concealed eyes fell on the youths poking their heads around the corner leading to the doorway. No, I shouldn't be surprised. Just tell us where she is and we'll let you live. Robert held an arrow nocked and ready to loose. Mail collected a whiff. Do I smell explosives in your arrow, Archer? He chuckled, eyeing up the hunters and the window behind him. Ingenious. But no, you won't. No, we really won't, said Harley, flexing her grip on the hilt of her sword, awaiting Mail's move. Playing time for drama, Mail slid his sunglasses down his nose and locked his unnaturally bright eyes on Harley, the corner of his mouth angling into a dangerous smirk. Our fates aren't tied, gorgeous. Be seeing ya. He winked, then, swifter than a heartbeat, flung himself through the grand window, descending in a deluge of shattered glass. Robert charged in pursuit of the escaped vampire, but by the time he reached the window, found his quarry already well beyond range, having used the building some 100 feet down to propel himself to the slant of the nearest semi-toppled behemoth and make clean his getaway. "Goddamn bloodsuckers," he grumbled. "If there's one power of theirs I'm mighty jealous of, it's that fuck you agility." "Ain't just that, and you know it, babe," quipped Harley. "Come on." "Jessie!" Scott kicked the door wide and bolted towards his sister, flinging his arms around her without a second thought, blind to the bemusement playing over her face. "Thank God you're okay." "Hold up a sec there, Scotty," called Harley from the hallway, appearing in the threshold a moment later. "Jess?" Gary poked his head around the doorframe, but the huntress kept him back. "Did she call you Scotty?" Jessie whispered as her brother withdrew and held her by the shoulders. A warm smile passed over her lips, but not her eyes. "I thought I was the only one allowed to call you that." Scott's cheeks burned as he cast a hasty glance behind, then greeted his sister's searching gaze once again. They helped us find you." "They?" Robert appeared behind his wife as Jessie spoke. "Ah," she continued, "I getcha. Are you okay? What did they do to—" "I'm fine, Scott. Honestly. Never better." "Jesus!" Scott threw his arms around her again, drawing her into a tight hug. "I've never been so worried. You can't do that to me. I can't lose you, sis, alright?" Jessie held him close, hand resting delicately at his nape. The hunters tensed. Harley nudged Gary aside and braced her position. "You won't have to. It can be the way it was meant to be. Two of us against the world. Just like when we were kids," Jessie whispered in her brother's ear. "Two?" Scott withdrew from the embrace, blinking to banish confusion from his contorted features. "But the baby?" His eyes fell, and he registered for the first time the distinct absence of her baby bump, the hideous stains in the most ominous of regions. "Jessie, what the hell?" "Shh, Scotty, it's all right. Honestly, everything's going to be fine. You have to trust me. And you do, right? You trust me, don't you?" Scott made it halfway through, looking over his shoulder for support, when his sister's slender fingers gripped his chin and forced his eyes back to hers. "Don't you, Scotty?" "Kid," warning and concern edged Robert's commanding tone, but Scott didn't care. "What happened?" he stammered. Jessie released her brother, huffed, blowing a strawberry strand from her vision, and planted her hands on her hips. "You won't understand. Not yet. But you will. All you have to do is send these hunters away, and things will be as they were. Better even. As they should be. Two against the world, watching each other's backs just like Mum and Dad taught us. Jess, listen to yourself. This isn't right. And I mean, what about Gary? What about the kids?" Unable to cage the instinctual reaction, Jessie licked her lips. a singularly disturbing motion which sent electrifying chills coursing through her brother's spine and summoned the crashing realization of all that had transpired during their short separation. "Jessie, please, God, no. This isn't you. This can't be you. This can't have... Ugh!" Jessie flung her arms in despair. "Still so much of the child in you, Scotty. Haven't I always known best? Haven't I always looked after you, guided you, kept you safe? What kind of future would either of us have had running around with such shit heels? They're only alive because of us. We're better than them and you know it. We deserve this." A stone plummeted to the pit of Scott's stomach, all remaining colour draining from his face. "What did you do?" he drawled. The sneer which crossed Jessie's squirrely features was one of pure callousness. "What I had to. What I was born to do." "Fuck! Enough already, just spit it out!" Jessie's eyes narrowed. "Fine. Do you want me to say what you've already figured out, but that fragile little heart of yours won't let you believe? I told them everything. All about the kids, where we're holed up, how to get in, everything." There was not a hint of contrition to her words, and the ones which followed in the same suit bore enough terror for a lifetime. "And my daughter? Yes, it was a girl. She'll stay a part of me forever. A memory of my first, of the blood which consecrated my new life and baptized me in the eternity of night." "It? You said... I think I'm going to be sick," Scott retched, seeking distance from his sister, or rather, the demon wearing her skin. Unfazed, remorse towards her words or actions, and unrecognisable hope. Jessie did, however, tense as the hunters breached the room, murderous intent in their glowers. "It's not like I realised what they were feeding me," she said defensively, almost making her way to a sincere shame or regret. Then she gave a casual half-shrug, one brow raised, mocking innocence and undoing her efforts. "At least not right away." Scott's lip quivered, tears pooling in his eyes. "I can't believe what I'm hearing. Scotty!" Scotty! That's better. Jessie's authentic concern drew her brother back to face her as the hunters closed in. "Send them away. I don't like how they're staring at me, Scotty. You wouldn't let them hurt me." Scott gulped, breaths coming dry and fast, brows pinched as he met the gaze of the monster his sister had become. "I don't know you." Scott looked to Robert, then rushed from the bedroom. "Scotty!" Jessie's piercing cry hunted him, consumed with rage and desperation. "Scotty, don't you dare leave me!" Gary followed Scott into the living room, wearing his sorrow plain as a mask. "Scotty!" Jessie's voice became shrill, a wail bouncing off the walls in pursuit of tormenting the youths. "Stay the hell away from me! Back! Scotty, you'll regret this until your dying day, you shithead! Fuck you! Get back! Yeah, that's right!" There was an aggressive hiss. "You think you can..." The anguish summoned by the inferno of a vampire's demise is a sound capable of haunting a man until the end of his days, especially when the source lies close to the heart. That cursed sound was one Scott had heard 3 times already this day, but this fourth was unlike any other. It echoed off his bones, conjuring the deepest misery and binding it to his heart. It filled his eyes, choked his throat, and bruised his soul, condemning it to a realm darker than any he had conceived in his 19 short years of life.